Australia's future is underpinned by its minerals, energy and groundwater resources. These resources are needed now more than ever as Australia and our global partners strengthen our low emissions economy. Committed to securing Australia's future as a global supplier of the resources necessary to support the net zero transition, the Australian Government has established Resourcing Australia's Prosperity, a $3.4 billion initiative being led by Geoscience Australia. Over the next 35 years, Resourcing Australia's Prosperity will play a key role in unlocking new opportunities to supply the materials required to support our economy, grow our resources sector and maintain our national security. This new information will underpin targeted exploration to help lower investment risk, support government policy decisions and provide communities with the tools to inform natural resource management. We'll work closely with our stakeholders to help them realise the benefits of pre-competitive geoscience data and information and continue to build strong, lasting relationships with First Nations peoples to create further collaborative opportunities. By partnering with Commonwealth, state and territory governments, our research partners and communities, this landmark initiative will ensure a sustainable, thriving and resilient Australia for future generations.
Good morning everyone and welcome to the first dedicated online event from the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative. My name is Dr. Andrew Heap, Chief of Geoscience Australia's Minerals, Energy and Groundwater Division, and I'm your MC for today's webinar. The investment of $3.4 billion over 35 years by the Australian Government in Geoscience Australia to lead the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative is an incredible opportunity to deliver on the Government's ambitions for the country. It aims to help address key challenges for Australia, our economy and global resource markets, the net zero transition, sovereign capability and geopolitics, new information technologies and engagement with First Nations Australians. And we're getting on with the job. At today's webinar, we'll provide you an overview of our plans for the first 10 years of the initiative. There's a lot to discuss, so it's fitting that today's audience covers a wide range of government, industry, science and community representatives, including several of our international colleagues, and a big welcome to you all. Geoscience Australia values the lands, water and sky as we work to deepen our shared understanding of country and earth. We respect First Nations peoples and their enduring connection, contribution and obligations to country. Reflecting on our shared history, we are committed to listen and learn. I'd now like to share a video message from the Honourable Madeleine King MP, Minister for Resources and Minister for Northern Australia.
I want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I'm speaking, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples, and pay my respects to elders past and present. And I want to extend that respect to all First Australians present. First Nations peoples were the first miners, mappers and navigators of this vast island continent. Now, I learnt this recognition of Indigenous sisters and brothers from Geoscience Australia a little over 3 years ago when I first became the Minister for Resources. It's great to be part of this webinar with you today where you will hear from Geoscience Australia on how it will deliver the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative over the next decade. The Albanese Government's $3.4 billion 35-year investment is a generational investment in geoscience and will help grow our resources industry to create jobs and wealth for future generations. As the Prime Minister has said, this is a time of profound opportunity for our nation when you consider the resources, energy and technology that the world will need moving toward net zero. The Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative will help to drive sustainable investment. It will improve the supply of key resources and enable our manufacturing industry to grow. During today's webinar, you will hear important details about the work Geoscience Australia will be delivering that will drive new discoveries and underpin development of Australia's mineral, energy and groundwater resources. This work will focus on assessing and mapping Australia's hotspots for critical minerals and strategic materials, Mapping all of Australia's groundwater systems are potential for geological storage of hydrogen and carbon and for the offshore renewable energy infrastructure. It will give us a better understanding of what lies beneath our feet. One aspect I'm really excited about are the deep dives into specific regions across the country, delivering fresh insights into the geology and resource potential in these areas. Geoscience Australia is already focused in the first two regions, the Birrindudu region spanning the Northern Territory and the Western Australian border, and the Delamarian region, covering parts of South Australia, New South Wales and the Victorian border. And I'm pleased to announce today the location of the third deep dive region, which will be in the promising Georgetown-Julia Creek region in northwest Queensland. Another important part of the initiative will be mapping all of Australia's groundwater systems to help support the future development of our resources and our food security. The discoveries will also boost our resilience across the nation in response to a changing climate. Having space to co-locate mineral extraction, refining, processing and manufacturing is important to our trading partners. Our investment in resourcing Australia's prosperity will help our nation to become a supplier of choice for those materials essential to produce renewable energy technologies such as solar panels and electric vehicles as we realise our net zero goals. Another important focus of the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative, and one close to my heart, is delivering positive outcomes for First Nations peoples and local communities. Geoscience Australia is committed to building genuine collaborative partnerships with First Nations peoples, supporting the responsible management of land and sea country, and informing economic self-determination and decision-making. An important step in this journey is the establishment of a First Nations advisory group by the end of this year. Their focus will be on supporting positive outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people associated with the delivery of the initiative, as well as Geoscience Australia's broader programs. The commitment to ensure everyone can access and use the pre-competitive geoscience is at the heart of this program. The data and information will be freely available to all. The Albanese government is determined to support our resources sector to the benefit of all Australians, and I personally am really excited as the Resources Minister to be here at the beginning of this great journey. Together, through government pre-competitive geoscience, we will seize the economic benefits, deliver well-paid jobs and secure a future made in Australia. Congratulations to everyone who is helping make Resourcing Australia's Prosperity a reality.
Thank you, Minister King, for that uplifting and warm message. We sincerely appreciate Minister King's support and engagement with the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative, as well as all aspects of Geoscience Australia's work. In that vein, I'll now hand over to Melissa Harris, PSM, Chief Executive Officer of Geoscience Australia, to welcome you all to the webinar. Melissa.
Thank you, Andrew, and hello everyone. I am so excited to welcome you to this webinar, our first information session for the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative. I'm deeply honoured to be the Chief Executive Officer of Geoscience Australia at the beginning of this generational investment in pre-competitive geoscience. I'd like to thank our Minister, the Honourable Madeleine King, for opening today's online event, and what an endorsement of trust and confidence in Geoscience Australia and our role in delivering on the priorities for a net zero economy and a future made in Australia. I acknowledge the close engagement of Minister King, who is so supportive of Geoscience Australia and the work that we do, and has a true and genuine passion for ensuring Australia's resources sector remains internationally competitive and successful. It's marvellous the Minister was able to announce the third deep dive project in Queensland, and there'll be more information on this later. But I also want to extend a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us today to hear about the next exciting phase of Geoscience Australia's Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative. As the nation's trusted source of geoscience, we turn earth science into practical outcomes for industry, government and communities. We map, model and analyse Australia's geology to identify resources that we know are essential for modern technology and modern life. Of most relevance to today, we map, of course, Australia's mineral, energy and groundwater resources. Our pre-competitive geoscience helps to de-risk exploration, attract investment and guide responsible development of our country's resources. We are building a richer understanding of Australia's resources potential, not just about where they are, but how they can be sustainably developed and support Australia's interests. So these are the really core values that we are bringing to the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity initiative. As Minister King said, the net zero transition is both a global challenge and an unprecedented opportunity for Australia. The Australian Government's support over 35 years is a testament to the ongoing role that pre-competitive geoscience has in realising the opportunities offered for Australia's transition, including securing a pipeline of resource projects. Australia has a unique opportunity to position itself as a major provider of the resources, energy and technology that the world will need as it moves to a clean energy future. And so for these reasons, Resourcing Australia's Prosperity truly is a key initiative for Australia. Today, you will hear about the great science we will be delivering and activities we will undertake to modernise and expand our national data sets and the tools and services we will produce to support decision making. As well as delivering useful and practical outputs, we are excited to advance the scientific knowledge that underpins the work that we and other geoscientists do. While the science is exciting for many joining us today, this work is also about people, about partnerships and relationships. And I would like to specifically acknowledge our state and territory jurisdictional partners who are essential to delivering Resourcing Australia's Prosperity. As well as our state and territory colleagues, an important aim of the initiative is to ensure all stakeholders can realise the benefits of pre-competitive geoscience data and information. And of course, this includes diverse stakeholders, including local government, junior explorers, regional communities, and of course, First Nations peoples. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the many stakeholders who have worked with us to help develop the plans for the first 10 years of Resourcing Australia's Prosperity. As highlighted by the Minister, this includes establishing a First Nations advisory group, and this will help ensure that Resourcing Australia's Prosperity activities and our wider programs are informed by culturally respectful, inclusive and strategic perspectives. Last year, we held extensive consultations with industry, governments, research organisations, academia and service providers, and their valuable contributions, in many cases from the direct users of the science products and information that we produce, really helped confirm our direction and helped refine our plans. So I hope many of these contributors are with us for today's seminar and to see where we've landed with their generous input. On that note, I'll now hand back to Dr. Andrew Heap, our MC for today, and of course the lead executive responsible for Resourcing Australia's Prosperity.
Thank you, Melissa, for that wonderful introduction and for your leadership in supporting the establishment of the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity initiative. An undertaking such as Resourcing Australia's Prosperity indeed has big, even audacious goals. Personally, as I reflect on how delivery of this generational investment in pre-competitive geoscience has been refined through consultation, I'm confident it is supporting a prosperous future, including the resources sector, the engine room of Australia's economy, through this time of change and opportunity. I'm excited that today we will focus on the work we've done with many of you to plan out the first 10 years of this landmark initiative and the progress we have made to date. We have shaped the work program into 4 interrelated components, which we set out in the roadmap released in March this year. The components reflect that unlocking Australia's resource potential requires a cross-disciplinary and multi-scale approach, with a mix of new data collection, analysis and deep stakeholder engagement. So now I'll hand over to Anthony Schofield, Acting Principal Science Advisor for the initiative, to share more about what we will do and deliver under these 4 areas and the outcomes we expect to see. Over to you, Anthony.
thank you very much, Andrew, for that kind introduction, and thank you for the wonderful scene setting from Minister King and from Melissa. Really, we are at a critical time for the resources sector in Australia. If we're to embrace the opportunities before us, we also need to address the challenges that are facing us. The energy transition, ensuring secure supply chains, and making sure we continue to realise the economic benefits from our resources will mean a new wave of pre-competitive geoscience is required. As we move through this presentation, I'll be outlining our plans for the initial 10 years of the initiative. And as I go through, I'll be highlighting the areas where you, our stakeholders, have contributed to shaping the initiative, and I'll flag where those are. But we have a lot to go through, so I'll crack on. So as we heard, the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative is shaped around 4 components. First of all, we have the National Resource Assessments, and these are really at the pointy end of everything we're doing. So these are the maps that show the locations across Australia where we can find the minerals, the energy, the groundwater resources that we need to support the energy transition and ensure our ongoing prosperity. These are supported by Australia-wide geoscience data, which is really the ground mass of data which we use to build these national resource assessments and which help us to understand the geology and the resources in Australia. Thirdly, we have deep dive regions, and these are areas where we really go hard to understand what's going on beneath the Earth's surface and what resources that the geology may contain in order to open up new exploration frontiers to stimulate new developments. And finally, in the middle is data and engagement, because how we deliver our information is just as important as what we deliver. As I move through, I'll be walking you through the 10-year roadmap. So this is an excerpt from a page in the roadmap, and as we go through, I'll be talking to the individual components, I'll be talking to what work we're doing, and I'll be talking to some of the flagship deliverables which will be part of this initiative, but also going into a bit more depth around some of the work that's going to support delivery of those, as well as some of the other outputs. So the first component we'll look at is national resource assessments. And as I said, these provide the framework for all of the other pre-competitive work we do because it tells us where the resources are that we need to move into the future. So under national resource assessments, what we're trying to do is to stimulate exploration, so to open up new areas for exploration, attract exploration investment with a view to accelerating discovery, so finding that next generation of deposits, and also informing decision-making, so providing the data, the tools, the information and solutions that will lead to the next wave of resource developments. As part of the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative, we're looking at a number of key resource themes. Firstly, critical minerals and strategic materials, which are vital to a number of renewable energy technologies. Geological storage of hydrogen and carbon dioxide. Looking at all of Australia's groundwater systems, which are essential to support industries, communities, and the environment. And also moving into the offshore zone to look at offshore renewable energy infrastructure and what are the locations which are most suitable for those. We're also providing decision support tools, including providing information around competing land use as we have a number of different industries and land uses that are vying for the same space in Australia, but also informing the economic and environmental, social and governance factors that are relevant to resource development. So let's begin with critical minerals. So critical minerals are essential. We all hear a lot about them. As part of the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative, we will be looking at the potential for all 36 critical minerals and strategic materials across Australia. And so to do this, we're going to look at all of the vast array of sources that you could go to source those commodities. So from the near-term opportunities that we might realise in shorter timeframes, we're going to look at the potential around existing resources. So these might be deposits which have already been discovered, but for one reason or another haven't been brought through to development. And we'll look at what the pathway is to realise that development. We're also looking at the potential from mine waste and what the remining potential is across the country, as well as the byproduct potential in deposits that have already been discovered, and we can extract additional value from these, as many of the critical minerals occur as byproducts, as minor byproducts that go with other commodities. We'll combine this with longer-term perspectives on prospectivity through predictive mineral potential mapping. And so what we aim to do is to provide a holistic commodity-based view of the full range of opportunities to deliver these resources. And this will be delivered through a national mineral commodity prospectus, which will be an integrated view of all of these options, showing you where you can go to get those commodities. So during consultation, we heard from you your priorities around commodities, and we've used those to shape our delivery schedule. So beginning with rare earth elements in 2026, we'll deliver the first commodity prospectus, followed by copper in 2027, and then delivering priority battery minerals after that. And you can see them listed in the slide there. Now, it's important to note that we're going to continue to deliver the mineral systems maps, such as the one that's shown on the slide here, to support this. But what we want to provide is the overarching view of where you can go in Australia to find the commodity of choice. Moving on to hydrogen assessment. So hydrogen is an important part of the transition to net zero. It can provide a good substitute for hard-to-abate emitters such as aviation and green metal manufacturing. So as part of Resourcing Australia's Prosperity, we'll identify suitable underground storage opportunities and improve the understanding of Australia's natural hydrogen potential. Storage is really at the nut of the problem here, and so what we'll be doing under the initiative is delivering a national hydrogen storage assessment, which will be published in 2027, which is focused around the identified hydrogen hubs. So these are areas where the government is investing to stimulate hydrogen industries in these areas. And what we'll be doing is trying to identify the most suitable storage option around those areas. So a lot of the global storage solution is focused on salt. So we'll have a strong focus on that, but we'll also be looking at potential for storage in hard rock caverns, as well as in depleted hydrocarbon fields to identify where the best opportunities are. We'll support this with targeted data acquisition to try and work up some of these, particularly salt prospects, to demonstrate their viability. And coupled with this, we'll also be undertaking assessments of natural hydrogen prospectivity. So looking where natural hydrogen is produced and where we can access that. Geological storage of CO2 is another important component of the transition to net zero. At the moment, it's part of a number of different strategies around net zero, but we don't have enough of an evidence base to understand what our storage potential is in Australia. So as part of Resourcing Australia's Prosperity, we'll establish a national picture of Australia's CO2 geological sequestration potential and expedite paths to implementation. We'll deliver this through a national CO2 storage resource atlas, which will show the capacity for storage around Australia, as well as some of the factors which would inform the viability of those. And this can be used to identify the best opportunities for investment, but also to prioritise areas for ongoing additional study. To complement the national picture, we'll also be undertaking targeted regional assessments where we go really deep into prospective CO2 sequestration plays to unlock the key parameters around its viability, and collecting data to really demonstrate the key features that you would want to have there to make it viable, particularly around injectivity, capacity and seal integrity. The first targeted regional assessment is in the Shipwreck Trough, and this will be delivered in 2027, followed by further regional assessments. Well, it's no surprise that in the driest inhabited continent, the groundwater is really important. And groundwater is the primary water source for something like 80% of Australians and supports industries, communities and environment. So it's clear that we need to understand Australia's groundwater systems. It's of great importance. But our only national picture of our groundwater systems has been published in 1987. You can see at the bottom of the slide there. So clearly there's a need to update and uplift our understanding of our national groundwater systems. In order to do this, we'll be continuing the work that was begun under the Exploring for the Future program, continuing to roll out the National Hydrogeological Inventory, which are detailed data synthesis of 42 groundwater provinces across Australia. You can see those on the map there. But what we heard from you was that we need to understand the characteristics of the aquifers and their connectivity in 3D. And so as part of this initiative, we'll be delivering a 3D groundwater map showing where The different hydrostratigraphy occurs at depth and how it connects. And importantly, what we heard from you during consultations was that we wanted to understand how these aquifer systems connected to the surface. So as part of that, we'll be undertaking a national spring sampling campaign, beginning in Queensland and then looking to roll it out from there in collaboration with the CSIRO and with our state and territory colleagues. So this is helping to understand which aquifers these spring systems are tapping and helping to inform their management, as these are environmentally significant features. Okay, so moving offshore, as I said at the start, Resourcing Australia's prosperity is not just about our onshore resource potential, it's about offshore. And offshore has great potential for high capacity renewable energy generation. Things like offshore wind turbines are going to be an important part of the energy mix as we transition to net zero. However, where they're located is really dependent on having favourable seabed geology and geomorphology. But being offshore, this is really hard to map. So as part of this initiative, we'll deliver foundational data products which map the seabed geology and geomorphology. We'll then integrate and interpret these data to deliver maps of the key factors that inform suitability, building towards a national seabed stability map that incorporates factors such as slope stability, sediment type, geohazards, and a whole range of other factors. I've talked through the national resource assessments, but what about the data that underpins it, the Australia-wide geoscience data? Australia-wide geoscience data provides the data to enable the national mapping of resource potential. It's the backbone of our pre-competitive offerings, and it's what we use to generate the so what in our programs. Our aim with Australia-wide geoscience data is to make Australia the best understood continent, imaging all the way from the surface through to the lithospheric roots, through the integration of a range of geochemical, geological, and geophysical data. This data finds its use in many different applications. So it's important that we not only collect this data, but that we collect it well at the start, we curate it, and we deliver it in ways that are accessible. So collect it once, but find many different applications. And we see more and more the use of this data to inform different types of decisions which we could have never foreseen. It's also vital for supporting innovation. Again, many of the uses of these data that we see, we could never have envisaged. And moving forward, we want to make sure that the data is in good shape so that others can pick it up and use it to do creative things. Finally, it's important that we continue to deliver world-leading national data sets. Australia's pre-competitive data coverages are the envy of the world and have been the backbone of our resources sector for many decades. It's important that as we move into the future, in a globally competitive market, that we continue to stay at the forefront of delivery of pre-competitive data and provide new insights into our geology and resource potential. So, during consultations, what we heard was that there's really three themes around Australia-wide geoscience data. The first of these is around maximising the value of existing data, because much data has been collected over many decades, and there is a lot of value to be had in the curation, collection, and synthesis of that information. So as part of this, we'll deliver national and regional scale foundational seabed data products to deliver new insights into Australia's seabed. Offshore data is really expensive and hard to collect and can be patchy in terms of data quality. As part of our work on offshore data, we'll store and curate offshore data, making it easily accessible and findable and usable for producing derivative products such as annually updated national and regional combined topography and bathymetry grids that bridge the gap between onshore and offshore. We'll then use these data to undertake seabed feature mapping and delivery of a national seabed map series, which will inform things like the offshore energy work that I described earlier, but also informing other decision-making around Australia's marine jurisdictions. Onshore, we'll also leverage existing coverages to deliver new insights into Australia's surface and subsurface. We heard from you during consultations that geochemistry was a main theme. A lot of geochemical data is disparate. It's acquired using different techniques. It's stored in different databases, and there's great value in bringing all this data together in an easily accessible way. One of the key geochemical data sets which we heard interest in was a national compilation of industry exploration geochemistry. So pulling together the vast array of geochemical data generated during mineral exploration, packaging this up and putting in one place so that new patterns can be seen and new exploration frontiers can be opened up. We'll continue to roll out the work that we've begun under the Exploring for the Future program, compiling national maps of geochronology and isotope systems, as well as delivering updates to our flagship geophysical coverages of gravity, magnetics and radiometrics, using data acquired by our state and territory colleagues, but also bringing together other open file data and exploration sector data. But as I said, it's important that we continue to generate the next generation of pre-competitive data coverages. So we won't stop with new data collection. We'll continue to roll out flagship geoscience data sets and build towards a delivery of national coverages. As part of this initiative, we'll roll out delivery of 3 flagship geophysical coverages. The first is the National Passive Seismic Models derived from the AusArray program. AusArray is a passive seismic deployment. We've just collected instruments which were spaced at 200 kilometres across the country, and these data are now being QA/QC'd, ready for modelling and delivering in 2027. This provides the framework of understanding Australia's seismic velocity, which extends way down deep and can be used for a number of different applications, before infilling with further data acquisition in deep dives, which I'll touch on subsequently. We'll also be delivering a modernised Australian Fundamental Gravity Network. The Australian Fundamental Gravity Network, or AFGN, is a benchmark series of gravity stations which provide absolute gravity measurements, allowing different surveys to be matched together and new data to be nested within a broader framework. It's a fundamental underlying data set that ensures that we continue to derive value from our gravity data. We'll also continue the rollout of the AusAEM Airborne Electromagnetic Survey, which is a 20-kilometre spaced airborne electromagnetic survey. You can see an image of that on the slide here. It looks amazing and we use it in our promotions a lot. As part of this initiative, we'll continue to roll it out to a national scale, completing the coverage which allows us to image the near-surface electrical conductivity structure that we can find use in things like geological mapping, cover thickness, and groundwater mapping. We'll also continue to roll out flagship geoscience data sets at the regional scale. This data collection will be at a higher resolution to a lot of the national coverages and will be focused initially in deep dive regions, but with a view towards building out from the regional to the national scale. Examples of these kinds of data sets include surface geochemistry, isotopes and geochronology, magnetotellurics, both as part of the AusLAMP program and as higher resolution magnetotelluric surveys, and various kinds of seismic reflection surveys, which have been the backbone of acquisition in regional areas for many, many years, as well as higher resolution passive seismic surveys. The third theme is integrated geoscience interpretations, and this is where we translate new data into new understanding. As part of this, we'll deliver thematic map layers to inform national resource assessments. We'll also undertake updates to our flagship geology products, including the layered geology and provinces dataset. But we heard from you that it's not just enough to image it in 2D, we need to provide the depth control on these datasets as well. So with that in mind, we've already released a 3D stratigraphic model of sedimentary basins this year, and we'll build towards delivery of a national 3D geology map of Australia by 2031. Okay. So the third component is deep dive regions. As I said, these are regions where we throw the book at a regional area to try and tear it apart to understand its geology and what resources it might contain. So really these are around trying to unlock new frontiers which may provide the resources that we need for our future. There's a focus on frontier regions, but we've also balanced it up with opportunities in areas that are have more established potential. As I said earlier, these are the focused for detailed data acquisition, where we can begin the acquisition at finer resolutions that we can do at the national scale, but building up towards the national picture. They're also important as a laboratory to test and validate our resource predictions. So moving from the national resource assessments, we can then move into the deep dive areas and test some of these concepts, putting some of the meat on the bones and demonstrating proof of concept. Importantly, there's a lot of competing interests in a number of these regions, and so these will be developed in partnership with local reference groups, where we'll consult with with individuals from a range of different sectors to help design our program and make sure that we deliver it in a responsible and effective way. We currently have 2 deep dives active under the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative. The first of these is the Delamerian project, which is in southeastern Australia, where we're unravelling over 500 million years of geological history to understand its resource potential. This work was begun under the Exploring for the Future program, but we'll complete it under Resourcing Australia's Prosperity. A lot of work has happened here, but essentially what we've done is to unify the understanding of the geology across a number of disconnected belts across several states, and to understand as the framework for a number of different mineral deposits. This allows us to be predictive about the best locations to go to discover different types of mineralisation, including critical minerals. As I said, this project is in its final wrap-up phase and will be delivered in 2026, where we'll deliver a geological framework for the region and a multi-commodity synthesis of its resource potential. The second project we have underway is the Birrindudu project, which is a frontier cross-border region in northwestern Australia, straddling the border between Western Australia and the Northern Territory. This is an area where there's a lot of known potential in exposed rocks, but the nature of the covered rocks is poorly known. And so what we'll do as part of this project is to characterise the rocks in the area, correlate them across the borders and compare them with other parts of Northern Australia where the stratigraphy is thought to be of similar age and hosts major world-class resources. To help unlock the Birrindudu region, we're throwing the book at it with data acquisition, beginning with the Birrindudu Airborne EM survey, which we're currently acquiring and will be delivered this year. Subsequently, we'll undertake groundwater sampling, surface geochemical sampling, deep crustal seismic reflection surveys, long-period magnetotelluric surveys, and passive seismic. Finally, we'll culminate it with stratigraphic drilling, where we'll test our ideas and gain new rocks previously inaccessible for analysis. This project will be wrapped up in 2029. As Minister King announced, the third deep dive for the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative will be in the Georgetown-Julia Creek region. This is an emerging minerals province with untapped potential for critical minerals and has important groundwater systems that support industry and communities. This area has known mineralisation, which has been mined for many, many decades in the Mount Isa region. And in the Georgetown region, there are a number of critical mineral deposits that will extrapolate their potential into undercover areas. The area also has the Julia Creek vanadium deposits, which are the world's largest undeveloped vanadium resources. So it's an area with a lot of mineral potential. It's also an area with important groundwater questions. This is an area where the Great Artesian Basin is, and there's several recharge zones which we need to understand in order to ensure the sustainable management of those groundwater systems. So this deep dive will commence following the completion of the Delamerian deep dive next year, but work is already underway in the area. In collaboration with the Geological Survey of Queensland, we're acquiring the Budgumulla-Croydon Seismic Reflection Survey, which will deliver over 800 kilometres of deep crustal seismic reflection data. And this is off the back of existing work from the Geological Survey of Queensland and previous work that Geoscience Australia has undertaken with isotope mapping and geochronology. So it's an exciting area that I'm sure will yield new insights. Okay, moving on to our final component around data and engagement. This is really important because what we heard during consultations was that we need to streamline access to our data for a range of users. Precompetitive data isn't just for the mineral exploration sector, it's not just for resource explorers, it's used by communities, it's used by land use decision makers, it's used by a lot of people. So we need to streamline the access and make sure that people can use it. With that in mind, we need to make sure that our data is collected to be multi-purpose and reusable. And this supports discovery and the uptake of our data, but also supports ongoing innovation, as I said, as new users find new ways of using it to generate insights that we couldn't have imagined. But it's important that we also share the benefits of pre-competitive geoscience through genuine engagement with communities and First Nations Australians, which is a key part of this initiative. So with data delivery, what we aim to do is to improve access to data, insights and tools through maintaining and curating national geoscience databases, making sure that high quality data is available to users, but we also need to ensure that we continually improve and maintain existing delivery infrastructure. Under the Exploring for the Future program, we delivered the portal, and we'll be looking to continually update and improve this to make sure that delivery is fit for purpose. And finally, building towards a new generation of geoscience data delivery capability in 2030. In all of this, we want to take an approach which puts the users at the centre and takes into account user needs. With that in mind, during the Exploring for the Future program, we delivered the GeoInsight platform, which provided regional-based understanding of the geology and resources to non-technical users, so making sure that the full spectrum of Australians can benefit from pre-competitive data. We'll continue with delivery of the GeoInsight platform, but we're also looking at novel, innovative ways to deliver stories around our geology and its resource potential. The example which is shown on screen here is from the Digital Atlas of Australia, where we've published a story map around rare earth elements. And this shows a number of aspects around rare earth element supply chains, highlighting their importance to society and the different factors that are involved in the supply chains. These kind of narratives put our pre-competitive information into a context that people can understand, making sure that our data finds new users and that we're able to tell stories with our data. An important part of this initiative is building strong, lasting relationships with First Australians to create collaborative opportunities that support self-determination. A key step in achieving this is the establishment of a First Nations Advisory Group. The First Nations Advisory Group will provide Geoscience Australia with culturally informed and non-binding strategic advice and recommendations to support the delivery of local and national activities and initiatives. We're currently seeking participants for this, and to support this, a procurement has been published on AusTender and the Member Opportunity Board of Supply Nation. This process closes on the 16th of September of this year, and you can access the link to AusTender using the QR code which is shown on the screen here. The formation of a First Nations Advisory Group reflects our enduring commitment to a meaningful consultation, partnership development and respectful collaboration with First Nations communities. It is a step forward in ensuring that our work continues to be shaped by the voices, knowledge and lived experience of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. In addition, we'll continue to build partnerships, continuing what was begun under the Exploring for the Future program and continuing to collaborate to deliver data and information in ways that are meaningful to First Nations users. So, that has been a bit of a whirlwind tour through what we're doing in each of the 4 components of the initiative. To close, I wanted to focus on not just the individual components, but on the things that connect the individual components. And this is because each piece of work under this initiative is done to strengthen and reinforce the other. At the pointy end of it all, national resource assessments drive the data collection activities and shape interpretive products to provide the best possible prediction of resource potential. They're also used to inform the locations of deep dive regional projects and to provide ready-made testable concepts. These aren't one and done situations. Testing and validation of resource predictions in deep dives also helps to iterate and update models, leading to better chances of discovery. Deep dives themselves are the focus of a collection of high-resolution datasets that feed into continually improved national datasets. And finally, the Australia-wide geoscience data provides the national context for these regional projects, and we can use these datasets to build understanding which feeds into resource assessment. So it's all connected, and really the initiative is greater than the sum of its parts because of this. Finally, delivery and engagement helps to get the word out, making sure that these results are findable and opening the door for others to use and rework in innovative and fresh ways. So that's the end of our whirlwind tour through the first 10 years of Resourcing Australia's Prosperity, the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative. Thank you all for tuning in. It's a huge scope of work, and I'm confident that it has the power to generate the next wave of resource discoveries in Australia, which will fuel the energy transition and ensure our ongoing prosperity. So with that, I'll hand back to Andrew, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks, Anthony. As you can see, this is a complex body of work over many, many years, and today's seminar can only really touch the surface. And hopefully we've been able to pique your interest a little bit in finding out a bit more. So with that in mind, we now have time to answer any questions you may have. I'm sure there's plenty of questions. We have about 35 minutes for Q&A, and we also have a terrific panel on here ready to go, who are subject matter experts that can answer your questions. So to introduce the panel, we have Dr. Pip Richer, Director of National Seabed Mapping, who will speak to the Australian-wide geoscience datasets. We have Dr. Saleh McAlpine, who's the Director of Strategy and Analysis, who will speak to the National Resource Assessments. We have Chris Lewis, who is the Director of Regional Geology and Drilling, who will speak to the deep dives. And we have Jess Scott, who's the Director of the First Nations Strategy and Partnership, who will speak to delivery, awareness raising and engagement. But we also have our Principal Science Advisor, Anthony Schofield. So to ask a question, please use the Q&A function in Teams at the top of your screen, because the chat function will not work for this event. If we run out of time, or if a question requires a lengthy or detailed answer, we may take it on notice, so please include your name with your question and we will contact you after today. So, we'll switch to some questions now, thank you. So as the audience questions come in, I actually have one already to get us going. So Anthony, I won't just wait for you to get there, but this is actually one for the panel. Anthony, you ended your talk highlighting the importance of linkages across the components of the initiative. So as a panel, I just wondered if each of you could elaborate on the value of these linkages. Perhaps I could start with you, Pip.
Thank you, Andrew. One of the things that I think is really wonderful about this project is the way that we are not sitting in silos doing our own little piece that meets our narrow interests. So as I'm leading the offshore mapping project, which is one of the Australia-wide geoscience data sets, we're going to feed into carbon capture and storage, we're going to feed into hydrogen assessments, we're going to feed into offshore energy assessments, groundwater analysis, and it means that there's a real structure and a targeting to what we do. Australia's big. Australia's maritime jurisdiction is huge. We can't do it all at once. So how do we work out what to do with maximum bang for buck for the Australian taxpayer? Is we work collaboratively to find the best ways forward.
Thanks, Pip. Saleh, your perspectives.
Oh, Pip, that was such a good one. And I'm seeing it actually from almost the opposite perspective, because what it means to me is these linkages across all of the different components, they're at different scales, different resources, we're maintaining our national scale data acquisition. But for me, it's all feeding into allowing for effective national resource assessment, which underpins, Australia's resource future. So as Anthony mentioned, we are evaluating so much, and the complexity, it's quite significant. Critical minerals, strategic materials, groundwater, hydrogen, storage of CO2. It's really important to take a holistic and linked approach, because otherwise, how are we going to provide that full picture to those that need it, whether they be the policymakers or the land use decision makers, natural resource managers. And always, it comes down to how we best invest in Australia. So that's why I see it as a particularly important thing to do.
Saleh, great points. Chris, I'll go to you next.
Thank you, Andrew. Look, the way that I see the four components of Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative sort of interlinking and connecting is through positive feedback loops. So the activities that are undertaken by one component, whether it be the Australian-wide geoscience data component, the deep dives or the national resource assessments, or even the data and delivery and engagement part of what we are trying to achieve with this initiative, one action will always support another. And so we heard it in Anthony's talk where we might take national scale pre-competitive models or maps and then go and test them within the deep dive areas. We'll then take those learnings from the deep dive areas, those data, provide them into the national scale data sets, rerun those models and maps, and so continuously improve and build upon Australia's understanding of what's beneath our feet.
All right, thanks, Chris. And Jess.
Thanks, Andrew. I think one of the things that really excites me about the connection points for Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative is that it's really going to support us to better understand our stakeholder needs, to develop capability that really reflects the breadth and diversity of our end users, and enable us to take a really collaborative, multidisciplinary approach to the way we work, not only internally, but alongside, for example, our First Nations peoples and our local communities. So yeah, it's a really great place to be right now.
Thanks, Jess. And I see, Anthony, you got your breath back. Was there anything you wanted to add from a panel perspective?
No, look, I think it said it all. As I said during my talk, I think the real value of a package of work like Resourcing Australia's Prosperity is that it is greater than the sum of its parts, that all these different things reinforce each other, and that through them, through, for example, regional projects, we can increase our data resolution, we can acquire new and different data, we can test ideas. So it's, I think it's really through that, the power is through that integration. I think that is a pretty unique thing with pre-competitive geoscience programs around the world.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, panel. Yeah, I agree with you. I think if one of the lessons we learned out of the Exploring for the Future program is that bringing this all together sends such a powerful message and gets the most out of the information for the maximum number of stakeholders that we want to provide the data and information for. Right. So just going through if there's any other questions. Just waiting for that to come through. I understand there are a couple more questions. Just waiting for them to come through. Maybe I could ask Anthony a question too. Again, sorry to pick on you for a moment. You mentioned that that the data sets that we're collecting over the next 10 years are going to be revolutionary, and certainly a major advantage in knowledge. I'm just wondering if you might elaborate on some of those that we're focusing on in the first 10 years that will be coming out very soon, that people can be made aware of.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So as I went through, we're doing a huge amount of data acquisition. So the things I'm particularly looking forward to are those, like I said, rolling out of the flagship geophysical coverages, which provide us with new views that maybe we haven't had before to look at geology and what resources might be contained within it. So personally, I get those very excited, which as a geologist is really exciting. But the one that really, I guess, catches my eye that I think was one that was flagged during consultations is the industry geochemical compilation. So, industry exploration geochemistry, it's really useful, but it's really hard to access in a systematic, curated way. And so by providing this at a national scale, I'm sure it's going to lead to identification of new footprints of mineral systems, pointing us into new frontiers. And yeah, I think it's a really leading piece of work that really requires an organisation like Geoscience Australia with a national remit to pull together. So that's probably the one that excites me that's coming up in the next few years.
Anthony, and of course we rely and thank and acknowledge our state and territory partners in that particular project. So, but I think you're right. I think our strength is really bringing all that together in a national sense, so people get an understanding of where the opportunities might lie across the country. So we have a question also from David Upton. Thanks for the question, David. Which says, please elaborate on the location and timing of the regional seismic line in Queensland as part of the new Georgetown-Julia Creek deep dive. Who would like to take that one? Is that back again, Saleh perhaps, or Anthony?
I might take a stab at that one, Andrew, if I may. Look, thanks for your question, David. We are continuing with the seismic line up in the sort of where we've indicated the Georgetown-Julia Creek area. That is still ongoing. We are aiming for over 800 kilometres worth of line kilometres there, so it's no small undertaking. What I'll say, and it's a little bit cheeky, watch this space. We will be sure to communicate widely and broadly about the successes of that acquisition, particularly with our partners in the Geological Survey of Queensland. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Chris. Another question from Michelle Salmon. You said that the data will be made available to non-experts through stories. Will the data be made available to experts to do their own processing and interpretations? I'll start with you, Pip, for national data sets, and maybe move on to another panel member. Yeah.
Sure. So a really fundamental part of Resourcing Australia's prosperity is making our data available so it can do many things. Geoscience Australia is a pretty awesome organisation, but we can't do everything ourselves. Like to, but we can't. And so one of the things that really makes it worth putting the time and effort into really curating these data sets into comprehensive databases is that they become available to other people to answer more questions than we ever could ourselves. So very much so, this is going to be a collaborative process. We can't do it on our own, and we can't do all of the analysis of the data on our own anyway. So it's in our interests to make sure we share as widely as we can.
Thanks, Pip. And maybe you, Saleh, doing the national resource assessments. Clearly that's going to be of interest to many people. Presumably the experts in the field can get access to the data, so perhaps they can do their own assessments as well.
Yes, quite right, Andrew. I've actually I've got a groundwater example that, you know, Anthony touched on all of the things that we're building on from the Exploring for the Future program going forward for national groundwater resources. So we're, you know, improving the coverage, the access of the range of data and information, developing that nationally consistent 3D model. So that's both, you know, compiling fundamental information, but also adding that value. We'll be integrating, you know, airborne electromagnetics, regional seismic and borehole data, and that collaborative chemistry project. So really, we'll be both, you know, providing those data sets, that level of interpretation. You know, it will support everyone from the expert to the non-expert, because by providing the latest scientific information into everybody's hands, those decisions around, you know, how we can manage our groundwater resources in this instance can be made with increasing understanding and confidence.
Great, thanks, Saleh. We also have a question from David Purdy, which is probably directed to you, at least initially, Saleh, which is, why isn't mineral carbonation in its various forms included in the assessment for carbon storage?
Thanks, Dave. Look, it's a good question, and what I probably can tell you is what we're concentrating on in the carbon capture and storage part of the initiative. So we're really focusing on understanding the potential for large-scale CCS deployment in Australia. And at this stage, it's based on gathering data and generating knowledge that can, you know, reduce that uncertainty and risk around future investment for CCS projects. And there's a range of projects that could cover. But at this stage, it's in relation to geological storage. So some of the reasons that we're focusing on this are for the identification of suitable storage sites. So we'll be, you know, building on our strengths in pre-competitive geoscience to be able to help identify and assess the geological formations that can safely and effectively store CO2, long periods of time, of course. And we'll be able to support, you know, policy and regulatory development through that. The evidence base that we'll provide is, you know, really around understanding that environmental safety and economic viability of CCS in the country. But it is all about accelerating the transition to net zero, and CCS, you know, being viewed as a key technology for achieving that will have to be assessed, you know, in multiple parts. But yes, at the moment we're positioning ourselves, you know, positioning Australia to be a leader in the development and deployment of CCS tech. But sorry, I've forgotten the exact term, is out of scope at this stage.
Maybe I could just add to, I'll build on what Saleh is saying. You know, during the consultation period, there were lots of different topics that were discussed. Even though it's a very a generational investment in Geoscience Australia to do this work, we have to have priorities. And at the moment, the priorities are really around the storage of CO2 in geological formations. It certainly doesn't mean that other things aren't important. It really just comes down to priorities. And it may be that in the future, we can look at that mineral carbonisation to the future, depending on how we go with storage and geological storage. Okay, another question from David Upton, again for Chris. Does the Georgetown-Julia Creek deep dive region include an area south of Cloncurry and east of Boulia, where there have been hints of exciting mineral systems in both the basement and the cover?
Oh, look, thanks, Dave. And you do have a sharp eye, having caught that in Anthony's presentation. Short answer is yes, it is. And we've consulted with our state territory partners multiple times throughout setting up the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative, and similarly consulting with Queensland and the Geological Survey there around where those boundary areas are for the Georgetown-Julia Creek. As you've rightly pointed out, in some ways, with your question, you've also answered it. Yes, there is some hints there, some successes. It remains untapped as a potential area of interest, and so that's why we have included that in that broad boundary for the next deep dive. But if I may, that is a big area in the deep dive, and there are many other areas in there that I'm sure our viewers here today are going to perhaps look back over and interrogate, picking apart. I know where some of the good spots are and where we'll have interest and for minerals, groundwater, basin-hosted minerals, just including there the Julia Creek vanadium deposits. And we look forward to that continued consultation with our partners and stakeholders around what questions they have and what areas within that bounding area, larger bounding box, really matter to them. So thank you, Dave, and I'll pass back to you, Andrew. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think it's a good point. The deep dives clearly will, where, as Anthony put it this morning, where we throw the book at things and tear it apart. Part of that process will obviously be to talk to stakeholders about what we do in that area. It's not necessarily set in stone. We've still got a lot more consultation to do around those deep dives. So that'll be the opportunity to have those conversations, as Chris alludes to. So thank you for the question. One from Matt Greenwood. Will the compilation of industry geochemistry data be maintained and updated as a national data set? Perhaps Pip, as national data set, would you like to have a stab at that first? And then if others want to jump in, please do so.
Sure. So there's quite a few streams of working on geochemistry. So surface geochemistry, thematic geochemistry coverages, like the whole rock magmatic geochemistry, and also industry collected borehole geochem. So there's a pilot project that's recently been completed to evaluate how best to compile and integrate all those huge volumes of industry geochemistry data that's held across state and territory state and territory jurisdictions. And we're planning to sort of build out our national coverages of geochronology and isotopic traces. So there's lots of pieces coming together in geochemistry. They will inform insights in the deep dive regions and also be put into those national scale resource assessments. So yes, we will be working on those nationally. Does anyone else from the panel want to chime in on that one?
I might add to that if that's okay. Thanks, Pip. So as with all of our data sets, compilation and creating a database isn't a one and done effort. We need to make sure that we continue to curate, quality control and add continual value to these data sets. And you've seen the way we've done that around things like the Isotopic Atlas of Australia, which we delivered under Exploring for the Future. So with respect to the industry geochemical compilation, yes, we'll be delivering it in I forget what year I said now, but in the future years. But it will be iteratively updated and populated to make sure that not only it continues to add value, but that it's in good shape so that others can pick it up and, wave fancy algorithms and all these kind of things over it to extract out extra insights from it.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, I think that's an opportunity that we can continue to do. It's a relatively new data set that we've pulled together. We've done a pilot with Western Australia. It's been fantastic, and we want to see what we can do with it and from a national perspective as well under this initiative. So there'll be obviously opportunities to publish something, but then obviously opportunities to continue to update it as we move forward. So David Harmdorf from the Geological Survey of Western Australia has got a question, probably for Anthony to begin with, but we'll see where it goes. Is there an appetite to add more recent and more capable satellite platforms to Digital Earth Australia? How do we engage with the DA team? So perhaps before I throw to Anthony, One of the key things we're doing at Geoscience Australia is trying to bring our collective capabilities to the objectives and outcomes for the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative. So one of those is to look at our satellite capabilities, and particularly the data sets that our team in the Digital Earth Australia function bring together, and also the analysis that they do to that satellite data, which is just amazing stuff. And so as we move forward, there are definitely opportunities to bring our collective capabilities to answer the questions we're trying to answer through the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative. So with that as context, maybe I'll throw to Anthony to see whether he has any further insights he wants to provide.
Look, I think that was really well said, Andrew. Digital Earth Australia isn't explicitly part of Resourcing Australia's Prosperity, but Andrew's correct in that the data sets that are generated as part of that package of work can play a really important role integrated with the kind of data sets we've been talking about today to provide new understanding. So particular applications where I think it could be relevant are around groundwater, and particularly groundwater surface water interactions. It can really help with that more environmental side of work, but also around with critical minerals. For a long time, we've been focused on exploring at depth, but I think one of the really great things about critical minerals is it brings the surface back into play as an exploration search space as we look for things like clay-hosted rare earth elements and things like that are occurring in the near surface. And so as we look in the near surface as an exploration search space in its own right, these kind of other insights, for example, from Digital Earth, will be able to provide additional perspectives that we can integrate with all these other data sets to try and identify where all the best spots are and what the geology is in the area. So, yeah, very, very complementary.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. And obviously, the Digital Earth team will be adding data sets as they continue their program going forward. So I encourage people to keep a lookout for that. In terms of getting access or making contact with the team, if you'd like to just email the RAP initiative at ga.gov.au, and we can direct you to the relevant people to provide you or certainly get a contact so you can ask questions of the team there if you wish to. And there's one for Jess here from Sharon Jones. It's great that our First Nations Australians are a consideration in this initiative. Can you talk more specifically about the kinds of engagement that will be undertaken? For example, will we be making an effort to integrate Indigenous knowledge to help us understand our continent better? Over to you.
Great question, Sharon. Yeah, look, it's a really interesting thing about the range of partnerships, I guess, that we're looking to develop under Resourcing Australia's Prosperity. I guess to be really clear, some of our targeted benefits that the initiative hopes to support really are couched under the National Agreement for Closing the Gap. So we're really hoping to advance place-based partnerships, work programs with First Nations peoples, and to support First Nations communities and organisations to build capability and expertise in that collection of data and use and interpretation of data in a meaningful way for them. So one of the ways to do that is to engage early and build strong relationships where we can start to understand their priorities and priorities for the way that they might like to use and interpret our data. I guess a side one, I've got a really great example of something that we're currently doing. We've already commenced work in the Lake Eyre Basin region of Queensland, and we're working with the Lake Eyre Basin Ranger program to build ranger skills in and capability in sampling groundwater from bores and undertaking field analysis in groundwater properties. This has been a collaboration that has been led by the ranger group themselves, identified by needs that they have to care for land, care for country. It'll also help Geoscience Australia to work in partnership with traditional custodian representatives of the Georgina Diamantina Cooper Aboriginal Corporation and to guide First Nations-led groundwater initiatives in a drainage basin of national scale importance. So I can't understate how important the relationships are, and yeah, we're really excited to further those.
Yes,
if I may, Andrew.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Hey Sharon, thanks for your question. Another mechanism by which we'll be engaging, not just with First Nations peoples, but all levels of community, will be through the regional deep dive area reference groups. Now, those reference groups are somewhat by design to be a partnership between Geoscience Australia and our partners to understand what it is that are the challenges facing people who live, work and rely on country or the lands in which these deep dives are going to be undertaken. And so to the point of your question about, will we engage with Indigenous knowledge? Look, we yet to go down that path specifically, but the reference groups are going to be that mechanism by which we have those conversations and work out what really matters to meet RAPI objectives, but also be meaningful and useful for our stakeholders, not just nationally, but even locally on ground. Sorry for jumping in there, Andrew. I just wanted to grab that one. Back to you.
No, that's great, Chris. Thank you for doing that. We have a follow-up question to that a little bit from Jess Thompson from the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, which I'll read out the question, which is, how can First Nations perspectives and anecdotal landholder knowledge be meaningfully incorporated into the early stages of hydrogeological assessments, particularly in relation to the culturally and environmentally significant springs of the Great Artesian Basin? So I just wondered whether Jess or Chris, whether you wanted to elaborate a bit further on what your previous answer to the previous question was.
Yeah, I think, sorry, just jump in there. But again, leaning into what Chris just described, the way in which we intend to engage with people and communities relevant to the regions that we're doing this work, the reference groups is a really great example. But I think just to bring it up, and Chris, you can go down into that detail, but it's also really important to reflect on the earlier announcement that we are also establishing a First Nations advisory group, which is for Geoscience Australia, but with a particular focus on resourcing Australia's prosperity. So we intend to get some really great perspectives, diverse, culturally informed perspectives that guides that work and helps us build better relationships and approach communities in the right ways in this space. So, yeah.
Thanks, Jess. Chris, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think my earlier response and what Jess has just outlined here covers off on it, Andrew. But if there's any more detail asked of us, please feel to reach out to RAPI initiative@ga.gov.au. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, look, it's been a great journey we've been on, and I think, as Jess and Chris have alluded to, all of our engagements have been very positive, and it's amazing what you hear back and how the data and information that we collect is being used, and it's just wonderful to see those different applications. So, moving on to the next question. This is one for you, Anthony. Can you provide some details on how relevant security advice will be part of planned activities and data acquisition, and then making that available? The question is about taking a broader the perspective of the broader impacts of government being in certain areas or looking for certain minerals and resources. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. That's an interesting question. So, yeah, I guess my response to that would be that, when it comes to land use, there's a number of competing factors. So, what we're looking at is the potential for a particular area to provide resources, whether it's minerals, energy, groundwater, that sort of thing. But as I mentioned, we need to balance this up with other land uses. So that could come from infrastructure developments, or as the question's saying, it could come from sorry, what was it? It was defence, was it?
Basically a question about how we go about planning our activities and what sort of information do we bring together to make sure we're doing what we need to do effectively.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I get, yeah. So look, it really is about balancing up competing interests in an area. We are looking at pathways to bring those factors in. As I said, whether it's the environmental factors, the social factors, economic factors, all of these will be considered and packaged up. So, yeah, look, that's probably all I've got to say on that one. But it is important to acknowledge that, you know, any part of land in Australia has multiple interests in it, and so, you know, what we contribute through resource understanding is just one of those, and it all contributes to the narrative around, you know, how we best use that piece of land.
Yeah, I think one thing we've learnt through Exploring for the Future program and now being rolled out as part of the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative is really about making sure that we do that thorough planning and talking to all stakeholders that may be involved. So that's certainly something that we'll be doing as we move forward. The next question is to Saleh from Tim Bateman, which is, what will be the first steps in natural geologic hydrogen prospectivity mapping, and where will we be doing it? Saleh.
Thank you very much, Tim. Well, in answer to the second part first, it's under the National Resource Assessments grouping of projects. So this is an Australia-wide endeavour. There are sort of three components that go into the hydrogen projects that we're undertaking under the initiative. There's underground hydrogen storage assessments, there's salt mapping, and then there's the natural hydrogen, which you have specifically asked about. So there will be sort of multiple stages to this. The first stage is a desktop hydrogen assessment, which will feed in to the National Hydrogen Strategy, and that will include testing of geophysical techniques. And then there will be a major airborne geophysical survey to be able to find suitable salt accumulations, followed by land-based geophysics, including seismic, to be able to prove up salt prospects for storage specifically. We will be undertaking strategic field surveys to understand the potential for natural hydrogen in Australia, and partnering with state and territory governments to be able to analyse hydrogen occurrences with cores and recovered gases obtained from drilling campaigns.
Thanks, Saleh. And I think that builds on previous work we've published about the natural hydrogen prospectivity of the country. So we'll be obviously using that as a base to move forward on. But certainly natural hydrogen prospectivity is a key priority for the program or the initiative moving forward. And so it's not just about the storage of the hydrogen, but also where we can potentially tap into natural sources of hydrogen where we need to. So thanks for the question. And we now have another question to Pip from David Moore. Recent data focus from GA has been on onshore. So what is the proposed scope of the seabed survey? Is it the territorial waters or the shelf break or something more specific? And what sort of assessments or data is GA likely to prioritise initially in these areas? So I guess it's a question about what will we do and where will we be doing it?
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks, David. Well, Australia-wide is pretty big, so we're looking out to the edge of Australia's maritime jurisdiction, so the exclusive economic zone and the extended continental shelf. But we will be focusing, as I said before, we need to be working in the areas of highest priority first, because that is a very large area to be covering. And we're not going to artificially cut at the borders as well. There's a lot of water around Australia that we're also interested in. First cab off the rank is going to be bathymetry, integrated with topography, because one of the great values of this project is our integration, and we don't need to have funny artefacts at the coast where we've stopped working. We're just offshore and we're going to stop here. We will be working, initially in the areas where there are declared wind energy zones. So Bunbury off Western Australia, Hunter Illawarra in New South Wales. We already have quite a lot of data in the Bass Strait. And then we'll be working out progressively. We'll be working with our colleagues in the other Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative projects that have offshore interests. So carbon capture and storage, hydrogen assessments, groundwater, and the offshore energy project to identify where we go next. But bathymetry isn't enough on its own. We also need the ancillary data sets, things like sediment, sub-bottom profiling, and backscatter that help us work out the structure of that geology so that that can be turned into seabed features classifications, which can be used to inform questions about stability and structure. So we're really looking at sort of what shape it is, what it's made of, how sturdy it is as our first pass. So everything, everywhere, but not all at once.
Great answer. Yes, nice the way to sum it up. Yeah, you're right. The jurisdiction of Australia is a vast area, and there's, even over 35 years, you can only do so much. But we'll have a good crack at it, and I'm sure we'll get some great outcomes as a result. So thank you.
Thank you.
From Wilhelm Vivot, maybe for Anthony. I'll see where we go. In the presentation, you also talked about, I'm assuming it's Anthony's presentation referring to here, you also talk about developing tools. Can you elaborate what tools you are referring to and how these will be shared? Will this be via Digital Earth Australia? Anthony.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So, yeah, look, when it comes to tools, these can be a number of different things. But in essence, I guess what I'm referring to is ways to take pre-competitive data and turn it into new insights or things that you can use to help with decision making. So, a few examples of that kind of thing that come to mind are the Economic Fairways Mapper, which we begun under the Exploring for the Future program. We'll look to continue rolling out as part of Resourcing Australia's Prosperity. But can also include a number of other things like, new codes to undertake geophysical inversions, new techniques for optimizing different aspects of data acquisition, data processing, that kind of stuff. So, look, there's a range of different tools that we'll be looking to deliver. Those tools will be fit for purpose and making sure that they hit on the driving science questions of the initiative and making sure that we realise the benefits that we're trying to achieve. So it's really going to be, I guess, a horses for courses thing. But in terms of the second part of the question around how will they be delivered, again, it's horses for courses depending on the data. Many of these tools get published through the portal, the data discovery portal. But they may find their use in the Digital Atlas of Australia. It may be through code on GitHub. It's basically depending on what's going to be the most effective way to get those tools out to the people who need to use them. So I might leave it there and throw to others on the panel if they have anything to add around that. Or maybe that said it all. Which case, I think
you done pretty well, Anthony. I'm sure over the course of 35 years, there are probably a whole bunch of things that we haven't even thought of yet that will come on stream. So it's about us taking advantage of what we can and, like you say, delivering it the most effectively. We've probably got time for one more question. So we have a couple of questions around CO2 storage, probably for Saleh. So I'll go through them here. So CO2 storage prospect in the Darling Basin, New South Wales, is currently under evaluation. Will this be part of the national assessment? And then a question that's sort of related to that is, will there be any plans for looking at carbon capture and storage offshore that potentially could be used for CO2 enhanced oil recovery? So perhaps, Saleh, would you like to start with that first?
Thanks, Andrew. So maybe I could speak to the offshore first and throw to Pip if there's anything that she would like to add from her area of expertise. So certainly the offshore is in scope for CCS. There will be, a result of modelling from the shipwreck trough, for example, for geosequestration of CO2. And then all of this will build into understanding, our offshore prospectivity for that industry. In terms of the New South Wales question, I don't have the specifics on that, I'm sorry, but very happy for you to email the mailbox that Andrew highlighted earlier. But Pip's an offshore expert, so I'm going to throw to her to elaborate.
Sure. So one of the things about working in the offshore mapping is it's a foundational data set, like all of the other Australia-wide geoscience data set projects, where we're feeding into lots of analyses, but carbon capture, utilisation and storage is absolutely one of the projects that we're planning to feed into. And apart from anything else, there's shared data sets. So those legacy seismic data sets that GA is custodian for provide a lot of information about, the subsurface structure, but also about the initial returns give us bathymetry. So we'll be working closely with the carbon capture, utilisation and storage project to work out how to best make use of that data, and also how to, how our projects can inform the CCUS analyses in the offshore environment.
Pip, I'm going to steal it back from you. I've had a little message from one of my colleagues saying that the Darling is in scope, but enhanced oil recovery is not. So thank you, and thanks for allowing me to add that little bit of detail.
Thank you, Pip. Thanks, Saleh. One is a modern technology that you have instantaneous communications. Fantastic. Look. So we haven't been able to get to everyone's questions today, but thank you for showing a huge amount of interest and engagement on the program. If we couldn't get to your question and you've included your name with it, we will respond to you over the next week or so. But you can also email us, and I'll share the address again shortly. But I hope today that we've given you a good summary of what we are aiming to achieve over the next 10 years of the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative. As you've heard, this work is more important than ever as we face today's challenges and embrace the opportunities posed by the energy transition, global geopolitical events, and importantly, maintain Australia's position as a competitive global investment destination. Through this generational investment in pre-competitive geoscience, we will support increased effective exploration activity to accelerate discoveries required to support that net zero transition and enable a strong resources sector as well. So that brings us to the end of today's proceedings. Thank you again for joining us and for your role in helping to shape the future of pre-competitive geoscience in Australia. If you would like to stay in touch, you can register to receive the Resourcing Australia's Prosperity Initiative newsletter using the QR code or visit our website at ga.gov.au. But as we've said already, you can also email any questions you have to the RAP initiative at ga.gov.au. And we'll be hosting future webinars where you can get further information. So thank you for your time today. I look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. And until then, I wish you well. And so bye for now.